Hello, humanoids, Akbar and Adam, coming at you for episode 17 in our course on philosophy and climate change. It is time to channel our apocalyptic impulses and our revelations, okay, to get ready for the end times. Doomsday is upon us. Look, this is the 17th lecture. Somebody could say, you've buried the punchline when it comes to climate change. The basic point, the bottom line, is we are doomed, right? Okay, so let us, in this lecture, step into that position and make it as crystal clear as we can. And then we're going to reflect on what we've been doing. And then if this totally bums you out, don't worry, tune into the next lecture and we'll try to step into a much different point of view or worldview that says we're going to be fine, okay? But for now, let's really embrace this one and make a case for it. So this is Akbar. Let's say he's looking into this crystal ball and he sees doom in our future. That's what we're doing here. And we have been assisted, of course, by the article I had you read by David Wallace Wells, which, if it didn't frighten you, I don't know what to say. It sure scared me the first time I read it, and continues to kind of haunt me. So what does it mean to be doomed? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that that the humanity is going to go extinct, but it could well mean we see a lot of death. Although probably mostly in poorer people, right? Maybe the rich would still flourish. It means the end of global human development. So this 100 years or so trajectory that we've had of pulling people out of poverty, we're going to backslide on all of these metrics of human development. And you're going to see economic contraction, downscaling of production and consumption because of the cascading impacts of an ecosystem, a global ecosystem collapsing, and thus a civilization built on that ecosystem collapsing. And all of this is going to take shape in the form of really bad outcomes that, again, aren't necessarily all going to be 100% attributable to climate change. But climate change will be a driving factor in all of these things. So first of all, heat, just making large parts of the earth uninhabitable. Agricultural systems failing due to extreme weather events and rising heat levels. Coastal zone flooding where all of the major cities are. All of this leading to mass migration. And unless there's some massive change in the human community and we all learn to love each other, that's going to lead to conflict and war. Oh, by the way, we're going to have these infectious diseases spreading into different parts of the world. We might even have old diseases that are trapped in the permafrost emerging now. We're going to have water shortages, air quality hazards. As I'm recording this, many people across the US are struggling with air quality hazards due to massive fires in California. So maybe we're already getting used to this stuff. Maybe it's already happening, right? The end is here. It's not just near. Ecosystem collapse, oceans being poisoned, he talks about. Biodiversity crashes. That's what it means to be doomed. Václav Smil is one of my favorite energy analysts, and he's one of the most respected. And another way to say what it means to be doomed is just to say that this weird time in our history, the last couple hundred years, this fossil fueled party that we've had, this high energy party, is coming to an end, okay? The top graph shows you it's only very recently, and only still for a very small proportion of humanity, that we have led this high energy way of life. It used to be, for the vast majority of history, humans consumed little energy, and most of that energy was food calories. Well, now it's mostly machine calories, but that's going to come to an end. You can look on the bottom one, how this is a logarithmic scale. Look at how fossil fuels have changed the whole energy dynamic of the human condition. But we're going to hit a wall that's coming to an end. It can't be sustained. And we're not going to sustain it with tech fixes. This little graph shows you on the bottom as energy efficiency increases. So we use less and less gas for your car engine, say. Well, the top line shows you we travel further and further distances. So again, as long as we have, this is Jevons paradox, as long as we have a consumptive ideal of the good life, as we get more efficient at using a resource, we're actually going to use more of that resource. And forget about justice as a project of growing the pie, right? Look at these countries on the left. How many of them live with very low energy consumption? Do you think it's really sustainable to get all of those countries to live the way European and North American countries live with our energy levels? Come on, not going to happen. And it shouldn't have to happen anyways, because look at this bottom one shows you diminishing returns for energy consumption on the Human Development Index. We actually, the tragedy of our situation is we're about to hit a wall, an ecological wall, for no good reason, because we've actually overshot any sort of sane level of consumption. But again, we're going to hit the wall, and it's too late to stop. That's the punchline. So here it is in a nutshell. Look, the only way to avoid disaster is to stay within our carbon budget. But guess what? We're not going to do that. And it's too late for that. And that's going to lead to all those bad outcomes. So that's it. I mean, that's the case for being doomed. And it seems self-evident, right? That's what maybe a climate change course should just be, these 2 points. Right? We're not going to act in time. Why? Okay, so there can be speculation about why. Well, like we said with SMIL, this whole project of decoupling, that term you learned, growing the economy with fewer carbon emissions, decarbonization. I mean, it'll happen, and it is happening to some extent. But as a global project, no, that's foolish. It won't happen. Corporate hegemonic power and greed, the carbon industrial complex, the most powerful industry in the world. Do you think they're just going to let all the fossil fuels sit in the ground? And look, we're trapped. There's this inertia built into the system. We're all trapped in a carbon-based, petroleum-based culture. Are we just going to somehow, plastics are all around us. We're going to get rid of those plastics. We're going to change the infrastructures that we rely on. I mean, it's too much. It's too big. It's too interdependent. And we lack the moral imagination and the willpower anyways to do this, right? Even if it was more materially possible to do. So let's look at the evidence. Okay. So what I want to do, Akbar, gosh, help me out. Oh boy, that's not what I want to do. New share. All of the websites I'm about to take you to are linked in your notes. So I'll go through fairly quickly here because you can follow along at your own pace later on. Here's the case for being doomed, and here's the evidence for it. First, it's a simple math problem. Bill McKibben in this piece says, look, we have a limited carbon budget, but guess how much fossil fuels we have proven reserves in the ground ready to be profitable? 5 times that amount. So the math doesn't add up. We're going to overshoot this budget. And when we overshoot the budget, we get all the bad things that David Wallace-Wells talked about. That's it, right? Oh, by the way, proven reserves of fossil fuels since McKibben wrote this piece in 2012 have only gone up. So this shows you the prediction of Hubbard's peak, which was this idea of peak oil, that we're going to run out of fossil fuels. So maybe that would save us, right? We'd have to get away from fossil fuels. Well, guess what? We keep finding more and more of this stuff. And it becomes profitable to burn it. So that's not going to save us. This is it, right? This is maybe the one graph you have to look at and read it and weep. If we would have started earlier, okay, if we would have started in 2004, I'm sorry, in 2000, we'd only have to have kind of a 1% annual reduction in carbon emissions. We could have done it. But guess what? We didn't. We kept going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And now to reach a 1.5 C target or even a 2 C target, you're basically going to have to cut off the spigot on fossil fuels instantaneously. Well, not instantaneously, but very, very rapidly. When we keep increasing, you think we're really going to all of a sudden not just turn down, but sharply drop off a cliff? Not going to happen, right? Here, this one we've seen before. Let's see if I can get this to play. Here's our carbon budget, right? You've got a bucket here, and slowly fills up at first, and then it starts to go more and more rapidly. And so just in a moment in time, when we need to be rapidly decelerating, we're actually accelerating, getting faster and faster, filling up our allowable bucket. Again, we're gonna overflow that bucket. And if you think, right? That we're going to drill a hole in the bottom, right? That metaphor of carbon capture and storage. We don't have the tech for that. That seems like wishful thinking. This piece we've looked at before, this is Roger Pielke. So carbon budget's going up. We would have to, he says, replace, 1 million tons of oil equivalent every day with renewables until 2050, every day. That's like a nuclear power plant, okay, every day. And again, that means not just adding renewables to a growing global economy that continues to use more energy. It means decommissioning that many fossil fuels too. So right now we're adding a lot of renewables, it's great, but they're being added to a growing energy sector. So they're really just kind of complementing a fossil fuel base. They're not really eating away at the base. More of Václav Smil, energy transitions, that's what we're talking about. And his point is, look, these energy transitions are never as fast as you think they are. Here, this green stuff, this is basically burning wood, biofuels. That's basically the economy we had for hundreds of years. And then whammo, real quick, all this brown stuff, fossil fuels took over. Right now it's 80% or so of the energy sector. You see this tiny little white thing? Is that what I need to look at? No, sorry, the black thing. Wind and solar electricity. And you see this thing below it? Nuclear. So those are your maybe biofuels. There, that little white thing. So there you go, that tiny little bit. Going ahead to 2050, you have to imagine that becoming the entirety of our energy sector, okay, displacing all of this brown stuff. His point is it's just not gonna happen. And even though renewables are growing, keep in mind, the whole pie is getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, innovation is gonna happen faster, we're better at that. But this fast innovation is gonna have to displace fossil fuels on a growing market. Now the other thing from this piece I wanted to show you, oh boy, back bar. Power density. Basically, how much energy per unit of mass is in these different fuel types, or these energy sources. All this brown stuff, all you need to see here, this is fossil fuels. You see how it's above all the green stuff? In other words, this is all much more power dense than the green stuff. So to do hydroelectric, wind, solar, we're gonna have a much bigger footprint because it's not as dense to get the same amount of energy out of it. So energy transitions have always been to denser and denser fuels. Now, unless we have a massive shift to nuclear, we're now going to have to pull off a massive energy transition in record time to less dense fuels. Forget about it, right? What was I going to show you here? Oh, fossil fuel. Oh, yes. Let's see. I wanted to show you share of primary energy from fossil fuels. Look at this graph. So you want to get to net zero? Well, gosh, we really don't have any countries that are at net zero now, maybe a few. This is less than 40%. There you go, 50 to 60%. Some countries, notice France, why? Lots of nuclear. 60 to 70%, Canada, why? Lots of hydroelectric. Some countries between 70 and 80, but look at all the big countries between 80 and 90% fossil fuel based, and all the ones over 90% fossil fuel based. Not going to change, right? Not quickly enough. And so what's going to happen, this is a piece I've linked to in your notes. This is a two-part series, at least that I know of. 1% of the world right now lives in a barely livable hot zone. See that? This is IPCC guesses, estimates here, by 2070, look at that, it could go up to 19%. This means barely livable or uninhabitable hot zones around the world. And then this series raises the question, billions of people living there, well, where are they going to go? Okay, what's going to happen? Now, so look, climate chaos is on our future, and yet, here's a poll of what do you care about in the 2020 election? Yet we still think climate change is an issue, right? As if it wasn't the economy and healthcare and all of these things and foreign policy when you talk about migration. So we still have it as an issue. And by the way, a not very important issue. So we just aren't able to conceptualize of this, which is part of the problem. And we have this empathy problem. Okay, we see it happening and we get kind of used to it. And it's a shifting baseline syndrome where this bad stuff is going to happen. And you know what? We're just going to get used to it. We're just going to keep kind of blocking it out too. Okay, so that's my quick case for this doomsday future. Let me go back to our slideshow. I hope that worked. So, do we give up? Well, no, because being doomed is a matter of degrees, figuratively and literally, as in 2 degrees is better than 3 degrees C. 3 is better than 4, right? And also it's a matter of degree because how bad things get will slide along with those temperature degrees. So we should still push for aggressive mitigation, even though we're not going to hit our best targets. But here's the thing, we need to start adapting in all sorts of ways. So not just policies and infrastructure, you know, not building in flood zones and all of that stuff, but our mentality. Like Smill is saying, we have to get ready to let go of this high energy way of life. Okay, it's going to change. And we have to, maybe most importantly, enlarge our sense of self and our sense of community to embrace the global community that is going to be shocked by global climate change and to pull together and share our limited resources and spaces. Okay, now quickly, what did we just do? So let's step outside of that doomsday worldview. What we're doing, this is our module on theories of climate politics. So a theory is just a view of the decisive features of the world. It's a way of making sense and making meaning out of complexity. If you think about it, consciousness or perception or attention does this. You have to kind of focus and pick out certain things to see and put your attention to. Otherwise, it's a blooming, buzzing confusion, to use the words of William James. So a theory is like a worldview in that it sort of focuses our attention on the important things, right? So I'm going to call your attention to the fact that we're talking about climate politics theories, and that means people's worldviews. What kind of world do they construct? What meaning do they make? Because they're highlighting some things and they're backgrounding other things, right? And this doomsday worldview is a very popular one. And all I'm doing is saying one way to classify worldviews, not the only way, is by degree of alarm. How serious is climate change? Okay, we've just given you the asteroid view. This is an existential threat. It's an upending, game-changing thing. It's the Bill McKibben or Greta Thunberg view. Now, I don't want you to think of this as a binary, though. I think it's a spectrum. And I don't know, I think I slide along the spectrum depending almost day to day. Some days I'm optimistic, some days I'm pessimistic. We just did the pessimistic view, and it totally makes sense to me, right? But next time we'll do the optimist view, and it kind of makes sense to me too. The other way to think about this, and I put a Steve Fuller piece in your notes, is imagine flipping that line 90 degrees to up-down. Because what's really going on is if you're an optimist, you're on the upwing side of things. And you realize that risk brings reward. So the technological, economic growth and development has created better and better ways of life. And you tend to think of the earth as robust and humans as clever. And so that's this upwing pole. And this is the new political orientation. It's not left versus right. It's up versus down. What I just gave you was a pessimist, downwing, precautionary view of things, right? That the earth is fragile, that we're messing with it too much, we're going to overreach, we're being hubristic, and we're going to hit a wall and we're going to collapse. This is maybe the new political orientation of the 21st century. As we deal with climate change and other big tech issues, the real ideological debates are going to be along this up-down spectrum, not left-right. And this up-down spectrum is on these dimensions, especially about risk and technology. So now, why, last couple of things, why do beliefs fall along the spectrum? Why don't we all agree? I mean, after all, we all have the same facts, okay? It's what we've been talking about this whole time, right? Why do people have different worldviews? Well, Sometimes it's illegitimate, as in people are just sticking their head in the sand maybe, and they're just dismissing it all as a hoax. But I've been trying to make the case there's plenty of room for legitimate disagreement because the data or the science alone doesn't tell us what to make of it all. Again, we have to construct meaning out of it. And the more complex an issue, really, the more legitimate ways you can construct a meaningful, defensible narrative or worldview around it. Plus, we're talking about the future, which is unpredictable. I just spun for you a very dark future. It's plausible, but I don't know if it's going to happen. It depends on how we act, right? It depends on what we do. Okay, last thing here. These, I think, are the main determinants, and I put it on that slide with the gradients and the switching from left, right to up, down. Why these different worldviews? Well, I think there's three drivers. That's like these three filters that all the data you come across are being run through. These are like your, I don't know, psychological profile or something that shapes your worldview. What's your attitude toward risk? What's your attitude towards natural risks and technological risks, and how do you weigh those? What is your view of the proper human reach on planet Earth? Okay, these are deep, like metaphysical, even theological questions that I think actually drive the way people interpret and build these worldviews out of all the science and data. How sensitive is the Earth? I think this is a big one. If you read the David Wallace Wells piece with Care, he talks about Broker and some other climate scientists saying, look, the Earth is a war machine, an angry beast. Okay, in other words, we are poking a bear, and she's going to wake up and slap us down. And this is that downwing is also kind of a post-human view, as in humans aren't the only important actors. You know who else acts? Well, pathogens and all the other things on planet Earth. And they might wake up and really smack us in the jaw, right? When it comes to positive feedback loops, well, the methane is melting and that's going to melt more. The permafrost is melting, which leads to methane, which means more melt and more methane. Or the albedo effect, the ice is melting, which means greater solar absorption, which means more ice melts, right? All of this could happen. The Earth might be really sensitive, right? That's the sort of downwing view. And then also, how smart are humans? Next time we'll talk about this upwing view, the optimist view, that, oh, we got it, we're very clever. But are we? That's the downwing view. Can technology really deliver on the promises of green growth? Are we really that smart? Are we really that capable of thinking through the problems that we create? Or is that all hubris, right? And that's, I think, if you answer, yeah, we're just being hubristic, well, you may be more on that downwing, pessimistic doomsday pole. Okay, enough from me. This quote from Akbar and I were talking about this. He says, don't worry, maybe, I don't know, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk will build a rocket and we'll sail off of Earth right before it blows up behind us or something. I said, okay, I guess we can pin our hopes on that. Or we can have an alternative narrative in mind, and we'll explore that next time. Until then, may the force be with you.